Yo guys, this is Reinhardt. This is your favorite Russian talking. The monitor looks different because I'm actually trying its new BenQ gaming monitor. It's phenomenal for reaction times, but not the best quality in terms of just the graphics. But nevertheless, don't pay attention too much about it or to my long hair because I'm actually growing it out. There's a thing. Anyway, we're gonna talk today about the affliction lock, and affliction lock changes. And you know me, my friends, we're gonna use some mathematics and some theory crafting. So let's get started and let's actually go overview. Tomorrow I'm gonna try to do Shadow Priest. So, corruption. Corruption causing moderate shadow damage. This moderate damage is kind of equals to the Virulent Plague from Unholy Decays. Essentially, it's moderate shadow damage. Agony basically increases a huge amount of damage over 18 seconds. Get this. I am not sure what they call talking about causing moderate damage over 14 seconds and then a huge damage over 18 seconds, because if we take corruption, and obviously this wording is a little bit off, because moderate shadow damage over 14 seconds could be potentially almost just as much as a huge damage over 18 seconds, because 14 seconds lasts less. So let's say your corruption in 40 seconds does 5k damage, and your agony here over 18 seconds does, let's say, 7k damage. So technically it does 40% more damage, but it does over a period of almost 30% more time. So with that said, it does last longer, so I'm not sure the comparison of damage between the two. And in this time, when the agony deals damage, it have a chance to give us a soul shard. Now, here what's a lot of people like, well, unstable affliction requires a soul shard. That's the main change right here. 1.5 second cast time, especially insidious affliction that deals strong shadow damage over 8 seconds. If the target dies, the soul shard refunded. If unstable affliction is dispelled, it deals strong shadow damage and silences for 4 seconds. So let's break it down, these three things really quickly. So, moderate shadow damage, strong shadow damage, huge shadow damage. 2 strong shadow damage is probably going to be more damage than 1 huge shadow damage over 18 seconds, just by thinking of number crunching, because it does strong damage, but it's over 8 seconds. So let's think about it. If this one does 5k damage, this one does 6k damage, this one does 7k damage, this one will be the highest damage dealing ability. It's unstable affliction. While it does say it's strong shadow damage, it's half the time of the agony. So that's one of the things we need to actually focus here, my friends. And then obviously we have a drain life that kind of acts as a old school Scourge Strike, where the more disease you had on the target, the more damage ability will do. But in this case, it's always also channel. So basically the meaning that if you have 3 dots on the target, that's the perfect opportunity for you to drain life. And also heals you for a decent amount. Corruption should be healing again. While it does say that the dependency of affliction lock over here, it's basically lots of self-healing. One thing I want to pinpoint here is very simple, my friends. Casting a drain life for long periods of time in PvP, it's almost not possible to do. And the second is, it's proven fact that multi-dotting is usually stronger, essentially, than casting a drain life or casting a filler. Overall, the fantasy of the lock is basically moved to the right direction. Don't get discouraged. It's actually a very, very good change. Why is it a good change? Well, simply put, because back in the day, affliction lock had to hardcast their dots. There were no soul swap mechanic, but the dots did a very, very huge damage. Good example is they would crit up to almost 10% of the HP. One dot would crit off the 10% of the HP. In retrospect here, the dots would crit up to 30k, 40k damage. So that was back in the day of the old school of basically affliction lock, and they bring it back. The fact that we lost basically drain soul with an or malefic grass that procs a minor version of dots, they said it themselves. It's a good change because it did nothing but diluted the damage itself. So this is actually a welcome change out here. We have to juggle our dots, but in that case it will produce a lot better results. However, there is a bit of a problem, and it's not a minor problem. Unstable affliction requiring 1 soul shard. While on the paper it does look pretty nice, if you take it into the consideration of 2s and 3s, then once you start dispelling the shit out of unstable affliction, while the healer will take its 4-second silence, but that 4-second silence and a soul shard loss is pretty huge. And for example, for shamans with the cleansing waters, or for, let's say, well, back in the day, let's say priests would pre-shield themselves before they dispel that, it would kind of actually be a pretty significant change, because the biggest reason why you take affliction locks for RBGs, it's not only because of their spread damage, which is humongous, but it's also to coat and protect the crowd control abilities, protect the dispellable stuns, protect the fears and stuff like that, because of the silence effect. But now it's still possible to do that, but at much rare rate, because it requires a soul shard. Hence, that's the biggest concern will arise here. But guess what? This is exactly here. This shit is here for a reason. Out of all the talents, why they decided to showcase Contagion, after casting Unstable Affliction, you can cast a second one for free for 3 seconds. Why did they put it here, my friends? Well, very simple. And simple as a cake, because they wanted us to think, especially people who do like a really lots of like a high rated PvP, is the biggest thought of us would be, well, if the Unstable Affliction keeps getting dispelled, how we will be able to multi that effectively? And guess what? You will be able to via Contagion. I get the feeling that Contagion is going to be a must to have in arenas or RBGs, just because of the nature that it produces. Overall, I would expect with this, yes, the rotation looks again pretty simple, but also a lot of depth, because you have to juggle your dots and you have to do it effectively. Also, with that said, here it's basically the way it's gonna work out is very simple. You have to multi-dot as much as possible, and the dots will actually do significantly more amount of damage compared to the Mist of Pandaria, compared essentially to Worlds of Draenor. It will do the level damage of a Cataclysm or a level damage of Wrath of a Lich King. So my best guess is full 3 dots will do should be about 30 to 40% more damage. Why? Is because Malefic Grasp is gone. And the another question is what happened to Hunt, because I don't see Hunt here. Again, not enough information, but the theme and the feeling here is very good. I'll get the feeling that looking at the Shadow Priest, and I'm going to make a Shadow Priest review tomorrow, looks like Shadow Priest Affliction Lock will actually going to be a very strong comp, because Shadow Priest will actually, Vampiric Touch could potentially be a better dispel protection than actually Unstable Affliction, because dispelling Unstable Affliction will hurt our damage quite a bit. So, with that said, let's move on to the Demo Lock. So for Demo Lock, we have Shadow Bolt, 2.5 second cast time, generates 1 soul shard. Call Dreadstalkers, 2 soul shards, summons 2 ferocious Dreadstalkers to attack the target for 12 seconds, 15-second cooldown. So basically, this is probably going to be your stronger minions. Again, Demonology here changes the theme from Metamorphosis to the actual minion control, to the actual demon control. Now, everybody could read this. I would actually just go through the rotation itself and kind of get you the feeling of what would you expect if you would be playing the spec. So with that said, we have a Hand of Gul'dan, consumes 1 to 5 soul shards, calls Demonic Meteor that also summons the Wild Imps, which could be very huge, to be honest. Why? Because essentially 5 Wild Imps every 5 soul shards is pretty significant. Demonic Empowerment, 1.5 second charge, 12-second recharge time, stores up to 3 charges, empowers up to 3 active demons with dark energies, increasing their haste and health by 50% for 12 seconds, prefers stronger demons first. Question, the reason why they showed 3 charges here, because it empowers only up to 3. So you have your permanent pet, you have your Dreadstalkers, that's 1 charge. In the second charge, you can actually empower Imps. And Imps, they do cast Firebolts, so the haste for them is actually could be bigger than any other in terms of their damage boost. They might still do less damage, but they will benefit from the haste more because they have a lot of cast times. They cast those Firebolts. Mastery, Master Demonologist, Demonic Empowerment also increases the damage of your demons by 50%. Which is pretty significant, to be honest, with typical for Master Gear. Again, Demonic Empowerment right over here, 1.5 second cast time, 3 charges, and also increases damage by 50%. Doom, 2% of the mana, instant cast, summons a soul shot, and basically this in arena will have to multi-dot people with Doom as much as possible, because I get the feeling this is going to be one of the main generations for our soul shards, because casting 2.5 seconds for the Shadow Bolt, it just sounds like too much insane for me. Demon Wrath is basically a channel ability. Your demons crackle with demonic energy every 1 second within 10 yards. They'll do AoE shadow damage, has a 15% chance to summon a soul shard. Maybe channeled while moving. While this is on the paper seems to be very good, and people think that if this might make Demolux viable in RPGs, I honestly don't think so. Why? Because a lot of cast times, the Demonology looks like it's actually going to be getting ruined by long cast times, and I'll get back with it in just a second. However, it looks like a hell of a fun spec to play, especially here. Implosion causes all your wild imps to be violently yanked towards the target and then explode, dealing more shadow damage to enemies near them. Imagine if you stun with your pet for 5 seconds and then you just implode your freaking imps. You would probably, the best way to do it is probably you would actually cast Dreadstalkers first into the hand of Gul'dan afterwards and just spam 3 imps, because essentially you're very pressed on time out here. Maybe possibly it's actually maybe store up to 5 basically soul shots, cast Dreadstalkers, then get that Doom proc or something during that time, possibly get the cast 1 or 2 Shadow Bolts, cast 5 get 5 the imps going, have the imps, have your imps and Dreadstalkers do more damage with demonic empowerment. I'm sorry, this is probably the best rotation possible. If you're sitting at 5 soul shards, you call Dreadstalkers into demonic empowerment because they need to get stronger right away, because basically Dreadstalkers are expensive. 2 soul shards is actually relatively expensive, and they do have a cooldown which is even larger than demonic empowerment. So it's better to, as soon as you call Dreadstalkers, to actually use the demonic empowerment right there and then, instead of building up your soul shards back for your imps. Then get your imps going, then empower them again. After that, basically at almost a duration of almost at the expiration of your imps, which is 12 seconds, maybe at 10 seconds, it's best to stun the target and cast Implosion. The biggest question I have here is that the Master Demonologist, where you enrage your pets, will that affect Implosion as well? If it is, that's gonna be fucking nasty, because essentially you summon your 5 imps, you give them 50% damage buffer from the mastery, and then you send them out and you have them explode for 50% extra damage if they're affected by the mastery. Now let's talk about Demonology itself. Too long of a cast times. 2.5 seconds, 2 seconds, 1.5 seconds, 1.5 seconds, and the only thing that is instant cast is there's Doom and Demon Wrath, but it's kind of channeled. It's not even an instant cast for that matter. So with that said, is too much of a long of cast times, which could be proved to be fine for player versus environment, but for player versus player it's too long. The best way to balance this is probably give Demonology Warlocks basically a PvP talent, PvP only talent that doesn't mess with the PvE, since we're gonna have a PvP talent. Give them PvP only talent that will increase their haste by 30%. Just the Demonology Warlock's haste by 30%. Then we're gonna have a Doom ticks a little bit faster by 30%. Shadow Bolts will tick faster, and basically all of the cast times here will tick faster. So then Demonology will be more viable. But because otherwise, if I'm looking at this, and I'm just picturing fucking Kitty Cleave, basically Turbo Cleave or TSG just training the shit out of Demolock, he will get any almost damage out with his minions because of a long cast time. And we're gonna leave it at that. We'll see what's gonna be happening. Obviously we will be giving feedback as we go along to developers, and hopefully they're gonna listen to us. So with that said, we go into the destruction now. Incinerate draws the fire to the enemy, dealing moderate fire damage. Okay, Immolate criticals, critical strikes, 30% chance to generate the soul shard. Our question is, what about the fire and brimstone? What about spreading Immolate? Do we have to manually cast it on every single thing, or no? Like, what exactly is going on there as well? Conflagrate. Wow, English, my friends. Triggers an explosion of the fire on the target, dealing moderate fire damage and generating a soul shard. Also, backdraft, reducing the cast times of Incinerate and Chaos Bolt by 30%. Then we have Chaos Bolt that does shit tons of damage. We have Havoc, which is basically a cursed. It's 20-second cooldown. Mark target for 8 seconds, causing your single target spells also hit them. Limit 1. Limit 1. Is that one spell or one Havoc? Because Havoc is already on cooldown. That probably could be a spell limit. That means just a one Chaos Bolt. This is very, very ambiguous. The other one is your distraction spells did up to 40% damage randomly. What does a randomly at the end of the word mean? I don't know. So with that said, is channeled Demon Fire. Channeled 12-second cooldown, launches 15 bolts of Fellfire on at emulated targets within 40 yards range. Each bolt deals moderate fire damage. Sounds like a heavy damage dealing capability right here. But the question is, if emulate is only on one target, will all the 15 bolts of Fellfire hit just one target? Or what's the limit per target on those bolts? And like on a Death Knight, I could potentially see the good rotations, but when it comes to analyzing Warlocks, it comes with a lot of questions on top of it, because it seems like just a lot of stuff that put on here haven't like there's a lot of information missing. For example, this one, the channeled ability, because motherfuck, if we can actually like have somebody stun for us for 6 seconds, or we can even Shadow Fury, but probably just somebody stun for us, and we just do channel, and all of the 15 bolts of Fellfire just keep continuously hitting one target, that target's probably gonna die after 15 moderate damages. So I will lose like 80% of their HP just thinking here. Now let's talk about the feel overall for the Distraction Lock and the rotation and everything else. So we have Incinerate, which is basically just a regular damage dealer. It's 2 seconds, it's pretty long at the same time, deals moderate fire damage. Obviously we want to open up with the Emulate first. That has a 30% chance to generate the soul shard, and I would imagine just like now we would actually start with the 4 or 5 soul shards. So with that said, is triggers an explosion, dealing moderate fire damage and generating the soul shard. So, and then the Chaos Bolt is the one who actually uses a soul shard. It uses 2 soul shards. So potentially the best way to do it, if we start with the full soul shards, obviously the best rotation would be Emulate into Chaos Bolt into Conflagrate into 2 other Chaos Bolts, and boom, the target's dead. Otherwise, basically, if what people usually do is they do Emulate into Conflagrate and then don't worry about Incinerate in general, and that's kind of seems like a case here. But the thing is, it's 8-second recharge time. It generates 2 charges right here. So basically, what this tells me is that probably for PvP, we're most likely gonna do Emulate into Conflagrate into Chaos Bolt into Conflagrate into Chaos Bolt again. By that time, we'll need to wait for 2 or 3 seconds where we can cast Incinerate or 1 or 2 Fears into another Conflagrate. So with that said, is let me just show you which the stuff that makes sense. Let's just kind of multiply it. So we have Emulate here, right? Then we have instant cast after that. Like, oh, there's a macro for that. Fuck that shit. Okay, Conflagrate. 8 seconds. You get 30% haste, making your globals about almost 1 second, but making your Chaos Bolt roughly about 1.75 second cast time. 1.75 sec Chaos, right? So the way it works is when you do Conflagrate, right? We're gonna add about, Actually, sorry. I kind of messed it up. It doesn't increase. It doesn't reduce the global cooldown. What the hell am I saying? It just like gives a haste for those two abilities. So we have chaos into conflagrate that we cast like so. Immolate, right? Yeah, plus conflagrate. We have 1.5 sec global. Then into chaos, which is 3.5 seconds total. We'll take that. We are at 5 seconds. Okay. We used 4 soul shards. We have 1 remaining out of 5. As far as I know, it looks like here Demonology will have 5 soul shards. So my best guess is Destruction is gonna have another 5 soul shards, right? So here basically we use 5 seconds, and here we got accelerator of haste for 5 seconds. You see how everything's kind of on point here? You get the 5 seconds haste for 30%, and then you will use all of that haste right away if you cast 2 back-to-back Chaos Bolts. Now, with that said, actually let's put it over here so you can. Doesn't let me do it. What a bummer. So you're at 5 seconds, right? And you're 1 remaining soul shard. Then you do another conflagrate. And we are at 6.5 seconds, right? At 6.5 seconds, you have 2 soul shards, right? That's 2 soul shards gives you another 1.75 second Chaos Bolt. That will put you at 8.25 seconds total of your rotation used, and that's ideal. You casted 3 Chaos Bolts. Conflag came off CD. Right there. Okay? So it's a perfect lineup. Immolate into Conflagrate, into Chaos Bolt, into the Conflagrate again. Into another Chaos Bolt. All of that rotation will take about 10 seconds. Within 10 seconds, the immolation will proc 3 times with a 30% chance of generating the soul shard. If you open the calculator, it's 0.7 times 1, 2, 3. We have about 65.7% chance for it to proc the soul shard, which in most cases we could safely assume that it will proc the soul shard. At that time, the last conflag that came off CD and the proc from Immolate will give you another 2 soul shards to cast the 4th Chaos Bolt. And that's fucking massive. So if somebody won't stop the lock from the beginning till the end, the lock can do 4 Chaos Bolts within 12 seconds with optimal rotation and no stopping. And that is huge, alright? Within that 10 seconds you can do that. After the first conflag, you can pop Havoc on the target itself, and during 8 seconds, I'm not sure about this limit 1, but if we're continuously popping those freaking Chaos Bolts, you can pump out 2 Chaos Bolts into different targets. And those, you can pop out 4 Chaos Bolts into 2 different targets within like, maybe 3, I would say 3 Chaos Bolts into 2 different targets in an 8-second rotation window, which is huge. It means that essentially what they want to do is they want you to set up all your damage right over here, utilize it properly between Incinerate. Incinerate is, I just don't feel Incinerate kind of fitting the meta here at all. Yes, you can cast it in between, but the amount of soul shard you're generating from Immolation, and if you actually multi-dark Immolate here, and if you're gonna be conflagrate off the cooldown right away, you should be casting like 2 to 3 Chaos Bolts per 1 Incinerate, just from the rotation alone. And that's what I see here, my friends. Obviously I could be wrong, obviously there's right information missing, but keep in mind guys, I'm a fucking nerd, so I like doing number crunching, and that's what I see here for PvP so far. Let me know what you guys think below, and let me know if you're looking forward to Shadow Priest observation for this vlog. Thank you for watching, and до свидания.